Hello, and welcome to another weekly digital strategy chat with Denver Data Web. We're a digital strategy company, so we help our clients overcome their unique challenges with a goals focused approach to web development, web design, and digital marketing. My name is David Zonka. I'm a digital strategist here at Denver Data Web. And with me today, we have Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Davis. I'm the digital marketing analyst at Denver Data Web.
And thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everybody that joins us. We love the comments and questions, so feel free to chime in with comments on any of the different platforms that we're streaming on today, like YouTube and Facebook. Well, Facebook, there you go. That's kind of a piece of our conversation today. So we're going to be talking about some of the big news with Facebook. Um, some of that is some of the challenges. We'll say challenges. That's a good word for that, right? Over the last few months, outages and controversy and things like that, and the Meta announcement and the Metaverse and what all that is. Um, Pretty great topic, Sarah. Thanks for putting this one together. I think there's a lot that we can talk about here. But why don't we start a little bit from the beginning, not all the way back, but the last couple months and what's been going on with social media and Facebook and all that.
More than the last couple months, it's kind of the last couple years. There's been, a lot of buzz that Facebook may have played a part in contributing to extreme controversy in the political and medical fields. And because of that, it's gotten a lot of criticism, we'll say. So as most people know, October 4th, Facebook was down for most of the day. So it's Instagram, so it was WhatsApp and a few other platforms. And a lot of the question was why. A lot of people had theories, a lot of people had really off the wall questions and things like that. Facebook claims it was a router issue, but the buzz is that they were restructuring their faulty, fair algorithms, things like that. But they also lost $60 million that day in ad revenue. So the question with that is, if it was a choice, if it was their own choice, what did they have to gain from that? And then shortly afterwards, they came up with the Meta announcement. So there's a lot of different things you can come up with. There's a lot of different puzzle pieces you can put together and a lot of different theories. But a big realization that came from that is people started realizing how much they were using those platforms and was it unhealthy. I myself, if you would have asked me before the outage, I would have said I check Facebook maybe twice a day, Instagram once or twice a day.
Hmm.
But I realized as I was logging in, I realized when it wasn't there, how much I was actually checking it. And it was a lot more than I thought. And because of that, it did make me question my social media usage. And a lot of people have been saying that. So because of that, a lot of people are thinking there's a lot of questions up in the air. So does Meta tie into this? Were they restructuring for Meta? There's a lot of things we can think about. But then what is Meta is the next piece.
Yeah, and maybe we should have a social media detox session or something like that. Let's talk about your social media usage there, Sarah. I'm really concerned. For myself, Reddit.com, that's my social media. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? Vice,
Dice, yeah.
of choice. I think a lot of that is where we're a lot of us adults, I hope not too many kids, place in society, culture, whatever. It's like a go-to when we want to be distracted, when we just want to like disconnect with what we're doing. And what did we do before that? TV was probably a little bit more. TV's still there, but what's available right here is just so much more interesting, I think.
I know I did a lot more like doodling and note taking before social media.
Creativity's dead. Jeez, I knew it. Um, yeah, no, that's an interesting thing. Like that's kind of where it is for me. There's a really funny commercial I recall from a few years back. I think it was like some kind of commercial paid for like a foundation for reading or reading Rainbow Day or something. I don't know, right? But it was like this guy, he's in his house and like the power's out or something, and like the TV shuts off, and he just like sits down in his bed and he's just really distraught, like, huh. And he looks over at his nightstand. He's got like a little nightlight thing, maybe it's a candle or something like that. And there's a book, and he's just like, "What is this?" He opens the book and it's like, "Wow, Like it's some amazing. I was like, I get it. I get it. And now that's where social media is. I think a lot of us are like over social media to some degree. We've just found other things we don't think are social media, but things like Reddit, it's social media, YouTube, social media. And that being said, there's been interesting research in that area about, is social media good for us? Does it have a positive impact? And this, particular organization, I can't remember off the top of my head who it is, so I'm not going to like quote or cite here. But general, the results of their research was that things like Instagram have an overall negative impact, particularly in young people, because it has people assessing their physical appearance compared to others and things like that. I think there's a lot to think about there because of photoshopping and all that, and the types of images people get. And Facebook, it's kind of thrown in that realm because controversy, like you hinted at. But YouTube was found very positive. A lot of people use YouTube for learning how to do things and for entertainment.
Mhm.
So I found that fascinating.
I
Um,
fixed my dishwasher on YouTube. I jump started my friend's car on YouTube. Did a lot of things on YouTube.
there you go. And if you record a video of you learning about it on YouTube and actually doing it, I mean, you have your own channel, and people are like, "Hey, look,
That's
lady
true.
fixed this car. Pretty cool." Um, but the meta announcement, all that. I know I was thinking that it was kind of funny with the timing of stuff. Facebook had problems with politics going back to like the Cambridge Analytica thing and elections and data mining and all that. And that could be its own session, but that's kind of old news at this point. But the idea that, Facebook or social media platforms being used to influence elections as a topic, that was interesting. A lot of notoriety there. And all the stuff with algorithms and the controversy these days with politics and medical stuff is a lot of heat, right? And it's the newest play in the playbook to, do a rebrand,
Yeah.
in the midst of that kind of stuff. I mean, when the
Well,
meta announcement came, I was like, that's not surprising to me.
yeah,
So I wonder,
it's
what do you
about
think? Do you
time.
think that's been in the works for a while?
I do. I think Facebook has felt threatened for a long time, especially when new social media platforms competing and at times like um, doing better than Facebook. I know when I downloaded, I think we talked about this last chat or the one before. When I started using TikTok, I realized how much I liked it more than Facebook and how much more I was using it.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there are different reasons for that. I think the algorithm is works really well with that one, and I see a lot of just really relatable content in that way. Um, but I mean, it's easy to see how, and you mentioned Reddit, and I actually love Reddit too. I think it's a really great way to learn things and to find things on topics I'm already interested in.
Yeah, that's what I
So
use Reddit for, learning. Yeah.
knowledge, whatever kind of knowledge, even just pop knowledge. But it's easy to see why Facebook would feel threatened. Why would they would think that maybe they're um, falling out of line with the direction that other social media platforms are moving in. So it's easy to see that they would try something new. I mean, usually what they've been doing is kind of just stealing other social media's ideas. They steal the stories from Instagram. Well, they own Instagram now. There used to be an app, there might still be, called Time Hop. Facebook took all of that idea and all of that glory. Nobody uses Time Hop anymore. So it's like it's easy to see why when they feel threatened and it's something that they aren't really able to replicate, why they would try something new and try something drastic.
Well, that's a funny thing, or interesting thing, to me is it's definitely something new for Facebook and how we perceive it. I'm not surprised that somebody like Mark Zuckerberg sees this kind of trajectory for the company, and they talk about the metaverse. um, and we can kind of unpack, again, what that is. But this whole idea of like the metaverse and everything, it feels to me like it's been this trajectory of technologies and social change for many years now. Starting with the idea of like virtual reality, which is going back to like the '80s and stuff or whatever, right? Um, when would that actually reach fruition? I feel like people thought, oh, that's going to be soon, and it's just always a little bit not quite there, and
Yeah.
technology is playing catch up. But then you have like the internet burgeoning and developing, becoming more sophisticated infrastructure technology. Um, you have things like these online. massive online games, stuff like the World of Warcrafts. Second Life is an interesting one because when I was in university, the college I was at for information science tried utilizing it as an alternative classrooms now. Second Life is essentially like this online world, but it's like an online game, whatever, and you have these you move around in these virtual worlds um as a way to interact with people. And it's those novels like, oh, that's kind of interesting and neat. But like, would we just start doing classroom work that way? Like, I don't know. I was very skeptical, and of course, it didn't really take off. That's the long story short. But these are all like attempts, to move in some direction where like people are interacting that way. We kind of do it through like online chat and then in FaceTime and videos and things like that. And now we have, augmented reality with smartphones. You can get meta information about your environment around you through this small portal. But then, virtual reality is just an extension of that in a much more immersive way. The challenge being that, creating that immersion is difficult. Well, Facebook bought Oculus, which is a VR device company and product. I found that interesting back then. I didn't make that connection at the time to where Facebook might actually be going, but now it makes complete sense. Because that's a piece of that technological puzzle. Um, but why all that, right? I mean, if people have seen that Ready Player One movie, that was pretty fascinating. It was based on a
Yep.
book by Ernest Cline. Um, and for folks who haven't seen it, it's kind of a dystopian kind of story. There's a future, there's an energy crisis, global warming, social problems. Is that the future? Or is that now? No. Um, but yeah, it seems much more bleak in the story and in the movie that's adapted from it. And there's this virtual metaverse called Oasis that people would go to and play games and interact and all kinds of fun stuff. But when you see it visually, their take on it, advertising and all kinds of monetization there, it's incredible. That's not surprising to me. I mean, why would people invest in this stuff unless you can make money off of it? Unless you already have a ton of money, you know, like Elon Musk, you probably wouldn't do it. But even then, those guys, they still think, to do it in a way that's profitable. They're making tons of money off it, even they didn't need to. Um, and it all really just, you think back on it, what is a big defining thing for the internet these days and what drives what people are doing with it in marketing? It's about rich experiences and driving engagement. Those are cues for YouTube and websites, certainly. Driving engagement. Why? Because there's more activity. There's more captive audience when there's a lot of engagement. Engagement's this big word in digital marketing. And why do you want a captive audience? Because a captive audience is somebody that you can advertise to, put ads in front of, to monetize, make them take action
Exactly.
and click stuff. So, this multiverse, not the multiverse. Sorry, that's Marvel.
Metaverse.
I'm really excited today. There's a lot of great stuff coming out on those streaming platforms, but that's a different topic. The metaverse, why is a lot of people excited about? It's going to be so cool. I'm sure, there's kids probably thinking about it, but honestly, I'm wondering, it's just going to be like ads everywhere. You guys set up your metaverse ad blocker. You're being bombarded because now it's jacked into your brain. What do you think about
Yeah.
all that?
I it's funny because we were talking about it before this, and we both came up with the Ready Player One type universe thought, and that would be so cool. And I think that's the direction a lot of people are thinking in. But you're right, it would make ads a lot more subversive. It would probably make ads a lot harder to ignore. Um, then there's also the question of if there is something, and who knows when and if it'll happen like that, but if there is something that's that significant and that immersive, will Facebook be able to charge for it? And will people actually pay for it? Because right now, most users on Facebook, unless you're running ads, Facebook is free. So are they creating something that they can monetize on besides ads? Because anyone who's in the advertising industry kind of knows that Facebook ads and Facebook marketing is a little flat. It does not deliver the way that it once did or the way that it promises to do. So, for that reason, are they creating something that they can monetize with users directly? And it's very possible we're moving in that direction. But if it's something that nobody else is offering and you can't get anywhere else, if they charge for it, will people pay?
I don't think they will charge for it. Um,
You don't.
I think it will be if this kind of thing develops, it may be iterative. You'll see like it'll be like more kind of like virtual reality stuff kind of jacked into Facebook, and at some point they'll meld together. I think Facebook to some degree, I think it's created an infrastructure for people's real personas to be connected through the internet so that you actually like it's not anonymous. It's like attached to like you have a driver's license, except it's like a website. I think those things are going to become more interconnected over time. And some places around the world, like China, they already are. There's a lot of impact there already. I think for Western culture and society and countries, like that's kind of playing catch up, or it might take a different trajectory. I think some of the and because of that, if the kind of political sphere, which I never really want to get into in a geopolitical sense, like stays in a similar way that it is now, I think they'll be segregated. They'll be like kind of stuff that like maybe China has, and for their people and constituents, and you have stuff maybe for like Western audience and everywhere else. Um, who knows? But I think Facebook will kind of become more of like that infrastructure for like people's profiles and how they can be connected up with these little hooks and things, like how like a website links to other websites. And then, they'll probably have some kind of level of the VR stuff added to Facebook experiences and more video until more and more it's like, these things you just connecting to it, and maybe the virtual thing is a part of it. I mean, certainly 100 years from now, whatever, it'll probably just be through a chip in your brain, and you won't have these devices. And from that sense, it'll be incredibly subversive if it gets that far. And I think people
Mhm.
will sign up for it. Somebody's like, "Oh, don't put a chip in me," or things like that. Like people, they're asking for it. You won't have to. And by a similar tone, you won't have to. They won't have to charge for access to this thing. The money will come from the advertisers again. And even though people will probably forget it, oh, sometimes Facebook advertising seems to work and sometimes it doesn't. When there's this newer thing, to borrow, inspiration from Don Draper from Mad Men, new is powerful intoxication. It has impact on advertising and marketing. Just it being a newer thing, it's green fields, right? And so companies will throw money into it. And that's where like Meta will make their money is access on that side. And then there will be a whole new marketplace for plugins and apps and access to walled gardens of stuff that other people will have, like of areas of things you can do within that experience that Meta doesn't even control. They're just giving other companies access to do something like they do now. Like you can put apps and games on Facebook, and then
Mhm.
Facebook gets a cut, similar to how Apple gets a cut off of apps sold in the App Store. They don't sell access to the App Store, but you need to have a Facebook or not Facebook, an iPhone, whatever, or an iOS device. So I think that's going to continue to be the way that sort of thing is monetized is get as many people into it as possible, which means lowering barrier to entry and then making money on the activity that they do once they're in there. It's kind of like eBay. Like, that used to be a thing. Hey guys, you know what eBay is? Remember that? I think it's still around. Yeah, it's still around, but
It
it's
is.
like, they reach critical mass. You wouldn't go anywhere else. That was
Yeah.
like their whole thing. Once whoever reached critical mass first, they're the winner. You know,
What you're saying is that instead of trying to come back from advertisers spending less money on, we'll call it lackluster marketing, they are making that marketing more pivotal and more useful by appealing to users to spend more with that marketing.
I think, yes, because Facebook just isn't as interesting or engagement driving as it used to be.
Yeah.
I think there was a time where it was more effective, and that's when people were more engaged with it and it was more novel. And, a lot of those people are just like, I'm kind of over Facebook. Well, when people are over it, they're less engaged. There's less activity,
Yeah.
and that's not a good thing. And I'm sure Facebook's been doing everything they
When
can,
there's less
Meta, to
activity, advertisers see less coming from it, and then they use it less. Yeah, that makes sense. I can
so if
see
you
that.
replace that with something that has tons of engagement and activity, that can go well. So I could totally see why they would go that route, the evolution. Will that come anytime soon? I don't know. I think a lot of people thinking about it thought it would be a very quick thing and time like, oh, VR is just around the corner, virtual reality, all that. I think it's going to continue to be an evolutionary thing. Like there'll be things that are added to it, and at some point it'll be like, oh, we're kind of there, but it wouldn't be like an overnight thing where we're launching Metaverse today. I don't
So
think
the
so.
question is with that, why are they talking about it now if we don't see anything from it yet?
Well, it's a great distraction. So, I mean, I feel like some of it is like the whole rebranding thing and all that and disassociating. What did Google why did Google turn into Alphabet and then like put Google and other things underneath Alphabet? I think Google's had a lot of stuff going on, last few years. It's a similar kind of thing. These people can think about all the pie in the sky stuff they want to do and let these other projects, which sometimes are controversial, do their thing and still make money and revenue. And if they become too much baggage, set it free. um, I think Facebook took a cue from Google in that regard.
Yeah. And we're talking about it now. We see nothing in the metaverse yet, but we're already talking about it and we're already excited about it and hypothesizing what we'll see. So
Well, I
this
think
is
we
a
do see some of that actually now, but it's not as compelling as what we sometimes fantasize what it could become, like in those movies, like the Ready Player One. And you got the idea of like this movie that came out recently, Free
free
Guy.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a similar vein for that. Like, it's a very interesting topic, and it's going to continue to grow. And it's not the first one. There was another movie with somebody's, the other ones for like gamer or something like that. Guy basically controls like these death row convicts and makes them move around this virtual world and that's kind of stuff. Um, I can't remember it off my top of my head, but it was a few years ago that movie came out. So there's more and more of these coming out. The people are interested in the idea, and it's coming from this inspiration from these online games that are already here, like World of Warcraft and all these other ones. Like they have millions of people playing them, but it's a much more confined experience, right? But I can imagine it wouldn't be a big leap in the near future for some of those to incorporate virtual reality as a part of that. I
Yeah.
think the technology on the presentation side is what needs to play catch up, and you're seeing more of that. Like you're seeing occasions that, like, Dave and Buster's and Urban Air and some of these places, they have like little virtual reality things where it's one or two people and they can do this thing. I feel like that's a pretty big step. And you see some of these cases where they have the technology where they have these little platforms you stand on that are kind of like treadmills, which is one of the biggest problems, I guess you could say, trying to solve. Because everybody who ever watched Star Trek and like the holodecks and stuff, where they're in this virtual experience, that's like, oh wow, wouldn't that be cool for anybody who's a nerd, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a nerd. I think that'd be cool, right? This totally virtualized experience around you in some place that you've never been before, right? But like, how do you make that happen? The idea that you can move
Yeah.
around into space instead of just standing there like, oh, cool, I can see stuff. But you're using like a keyboard while you do it. That's the disconnect that they're trying to solve right now. I think technology speaking, and they're making strides. These little one person like treadmills where you can move in 360 degrees and even like run, and so you're interacting with this environment, right? As those things continue to be developed and evolved, that's where you're going to see more of this just being to connected straight into the existing persona infrastructure, which are either these online games or Facebook. And I think it would be with these online games where it happens first, and then you'll
Yeah.
find Facebook connected to these online games in a much more cohesive way. So it's like, instead of like a fake persona or whatever, it's your real one or not. I mean, they may, who knows, they may give the option that you can just be a fake person. That could be a way to monetize, right? It's like, oh, you want to use like a fake representation of yourself? You're gonna have to pay more money. Otherwise, you're gonna have to be the real you.
That reminds me of a Black Mirror episode from a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen it. It's 15 million merits. And he talks about how like nothing's real anymore. And he's like, what am I going to use this money for? Shoes for my whatever they call it, their avatar thing. So it's interesting. There's so many things to think about with this one.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, like all those kinds of things are already there in a much less interesting presentation. It might
Yeah,
be like a little app on Facebook where you have a little little person thing like in the game that you bling out and you give stuff to, or like, if you think back for even some kids, like the Tamagotchi things, you'd have this little device you carry around that has like a little pet that you interact with throughout the day to like feed it and stuff, right?
I
Like
had
those
one.
things are already, that's the
No
kernel of all
fun.
that. It's just to get it to that next leap is the hurdles from a technology standpoint of like the interfaces. Um, if we can get over these crunches with like processors because of all the people farming cryptocurrency, and maybe people can make better, faster computers, right? But there you go. That's where I think it's going. Sounds like I've thought about this quite a bit. I'm sure you, I don't think about this every day, but as somebody who used to be a kid years ago watching Star Trek and all these other movies and stuff, thinking like, man, wouldn't that be neat one day? It's just fascinating me to see like how close we are to some of that, for good or bad, for better or worse. I don't know how much those things will transform society in a positive way or negative way. I think there's room for both. Just like with Facebook, right? There's controversy all over the place there.
I mean, it brings out a lot of my, like, childhood wonderment too, not even just technology stuff, but I used to love Alice in Wonderland. I used to try and walk through my mirror all the time, and if I had the opportunity to have a virtual experience like that now, I would do it in a second, and I think it really does bring out that sense of wonder and that sense of mystery and just being able to possibly in the future or the near future, far future, be in this virtual world that doesn't exist, but it kind of does. Sounds awesome. I'm
Let's leave
excited.
it with that. It could be awesome. We hope it
Could
is.
be awesome. We'll see.
Don't screw it up, Mark Zuckerberg. Well, cool. Well, I've really enjoyed this discussion today. It's a really
Yeah.
interesting topic. I'm sure we're going to hear much more about it as time goes by and see what Meta is up to and what they think it's going to become. We're certainly going to stay tuned. And when it could impact marketing, digital strategy, and all those things, we're going to talk about it. So, thank you, everybody who's tuned in with us today and checks out this video. You can always find us at denverdata.com. We talk a lot about digital marketing, digital strategy. And of course, follow us on YouTube, like these videos and things, and get notified when we have our next one. Thanks, and